Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Welcome to St. William Church here at Paoli. This is one of our three churches in Divine Mercy Parish. If you're visiting, welcome. I know we have a couple of visitors, but we'll get to sort of introduce ourselves once we sort of have a little small discussions. I just thought I would begin tonight by just a few reflections. I'll start with prayer. I'll read from sacred scripture, and I'll say a few words about that. And Sandra is on her way here, so we can offer prayer for her. She's coming a little bit late, but we'll offer prayer for her. So let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We give you thanks, good Lord, for your presence among us this night. We give you thanks for how near you come to us. We honor you. We give you praise for your glory, for your condescension, and how you come to us from the, so to speak, outer reaches of our experience, and you come very near to us. And we acknowledge you here among us, and we want to honor you. With all that we discuss this night, we ask that you would be seen and known, that we would be seen and known, that you would plumb the depths of our heart by your Holy Spirit, and that you would just a little bit more open up the eyes of our hearts, of our imaginations, and understand something of the truth, of the glory and the grace that Flannery O'Connor has written this night. We pray for Cassandra as she drives here, and all those who are still driving. We ask that you would give them safety. We ask this to Christ our Lord. This is a reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 7. And perhaps a little bit into chapter 8. I was thinking about what scripture I could read tonight, just briefly. I was struck by some of the themes in these two stories. So, after this, Jesus went about in Galilee. He would not go about in Judea, because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now the Jews' feast of booths was at hand. So his brothers said to him, "Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world." For not even his brothers believed in him. Jesus said to them, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify about it, that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I am not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come." After saying this, he remained in Galilee. But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private. The Jews were looking for him at the feast and saying, "Where is he?" And there was much muttering about him among the people. While some said, "He is a good man." Others said, "No, he is leading the people astray." Yet for fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly of him. About the middle of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and began teaching. The Jews therefore marveled, saying, "How is it that this man has learning when he has never studied?" So Jesus answered them, "My teaching is not mine, but is he who sent me. If anyone's will is to do God's will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own authority. The one who speaks on his own authority seeks his own glory, but the one who seeks the glory of him who sent him is true, and in him there is no falsehood. Has not Moses given you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law. Why do you seek to kill me?" The crowd answered, "You have a demon. Who is seeking to kill you?" Jesus answered them, "I did one work, and you all marvel at it. Moses gave you circumcision, not that it is from Moses, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If on the Sabbath a man receives circumcision so that the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because I on the Sabbath made a man's whole body well? Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. Some of the people of Jerusalem therefore said, Is not this the man whom they seek to kill? And here he is speaking openly, and they say nothing to him. Can it be that the authorities really know that this is the Christ? But we know where this man comes from. And when the Christ appears, no one will know where he comes from. So Jesus proclaimed as he taught in the temple, You know me, and you know where I come from, but I have not come of my own accord. He who sent me is true, and him you do not know. I know him, for I come from him, and he sent me. So they were seeking to arrest him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. Yet many other people believed in him, and they said, When the Christ appears, will he do more signs than this man has done? And then in just the next chapter, chapter 8, of course, is the famous story of the woman caught in adultery. It says, They went each to his own house, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. And placing her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say? This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. And once more he bent down and wrote on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? She said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said, Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on sin no more. I was struck by the question that was asked, or by a number of questions and concerns that were expressed in this passage in chapter 7. Particularly some saying, He is a good man, while they're saying, He has a demon, right? And then the drawing of in the sand on the ground, right? I'm wondering if there might be some parallels to our readings tonight. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll welcome Katie. Katie's here to help us make some sense of these stories. As you may recall, Katie teaches at the Ambrose Academy. Cassandra's here. Our prayers are answered. There we go. All right. Thanks.
This is going to be much shorter than last week. This is actually maybe in some ways better because something we'll get to talk about like the space of the stories, which is really comes alive in these two stories. Whereas mine is just focused on the plot and the characters. So this is basically a continuation of last week. And I want us to begin by discussing it. So based on what we discussed last week, briefly, that redemption is always the goal of O'Connor stories, but in this case, we maybe have some characters who don't accept the offer of grace quite as easily or as noticeably as the previous two stories. Particularly we read two stories where the featured characters were shown the truth about themselves. That was really prominent in both stories, and they were able to respond by meeting the offer of grace better in Ruby Turpin's case, and maybe with more fright in Asprey's case. However, because we have free will, that grace can't be rejected, and we maybe see it in these two stories. So, one of the questions on the handout that you got last week, but also was distributed today, I think it's on the back. It's either on the very bottom or the back side, I can't remember. I want you to discuss do any of the characters, can you find a moment in these stories where the characters are offered grace and either accept or reject it? So I want you to talk to each other first, and then we'll come back and share our ideas. And then we'll talk a little bit about this mini essay that I gave you for Flannery O'Connor. So discuss first about do they accept the grace? Do they reject the grace? How do they respond to this violent trying to break through their stubborn wills of our two main characters, Mr. Shiflet and the grandmother. Discuss amongst yourselves. to get into that. Okay, so what do we think about our two stories? Life You Save May Be Your Own and A Good Man Is Hard to Find. What did you talk about with this like offer of grace, maybe either accepted or rejected? Or we could even start with who are the main characters of each story? Yeah.
Well, we thought, in the first one she did, and the second one he did not.
First one being which one?
The grandmother.
Grandmother. Okay, so the grandmother did,
Did,
and Mr. Shiflett
did not.
Did not.
He gave evidence for it.
excellent. Okay, so let's start with Mr. Shiflett, in Like You Say May Be Your Own. So what was your argument? What evidence did you find that he rejected the offer of grace?
Well, he felt bad.
Felt bad?
But then he just kept on going.
Yeah.
Like he felt bad, but he didn't really think about it or, you know.
So he felt, okay, so wait. Back. The Life You Say May Be Your Own starts with Mr. Shiflett. What a great name. Almost Dickensian in its allegory. Right, like he's maybe a little shifty of a character. He shifts from place to place. He's like constantly moving. So what is the offer of grace? He rolls up at this, he comes to this farm with his mother and a daughter who is mentally a little slow, probably about 30, though acts like a child, right? So what is the offer of grace there? It's kind of maybe not such a bad guy, but how is God trying to get to him?
Well, he sees this life that he could possibly have.
Yeah.
Possibilities.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be a shifter.
Yeah.
You know, he could help them, he could do things to make their life better.
Yep.
And so we're kind of led down that road, at least for a while.
Yeah, so he's offered, right, like stay here at the farm, help out, like maybe some stability. We were discussing in our small group how he sees the car right away, right? He sees this like mobility, this way to get out, right? And then the mother asks him if he wants to marry her daughter, right? And he says, yeah, let's do it. And they go off to the courthouse, and they get married, and he's got his bright, shiny new car, right, that he's souped up. And then he is taking her away from her mother, and he leaves her at this diner, right? But what do they say about her? The guy with the daughter, about the daughter. Well, she's sleeping, right? She's sleeping.
She looks like an angel.
She looks like an angel god. So this very simple child, right? This adult child is offered to him, maybe as part of like, here, stay on the farm, have some stability, and he leaves her. He just starts driving away, and then he picks up a hitchhiker, which I find to be so interesting. Because what does he do with the hitchhiker? This is what I was doing like last week.
Trying to make himself feel better. He says, I always like to pick up pictures.
I always like, yeah, it's like, I'm a pretty good person, and I was like, pick up a hitchhiker.
Looking for a hitchhiker.
Yeah, he's looking for him. Yeah.
Well, he also doesn't scold him or sort of lesson him. He intuitively left his mother.
Yeah.
He's seemingly concerned about this. But when he's concerned or there's some sort of psychological projection, you know.
Yeah, it's like, you must have run away from your mother. You shouldn't do that. Right? And the kid is like, you haven't met my mom. She's awful. And he jumps out of the car. So this is like, that's an odd little episode. But I think the image that we're left with is this storm descending, right? Which kind of reminds me of the enduring chill, right? The descent. And he knew that the storm was going to follow him, right? And so I see this as the daughter was his offer of grace, this angel of God that maybe he had a chance for maybe not a glamorous life, but a safe one. You know, he would have property, he would have stability, goodness, right? Stop shifting around and get your roots in the ground. And instead, he leaves her and he pursues his own thing, but the Holy Spirit's not quite done with him yet. So that's the life you say may be your own in a nutshell. I have a lot to say about Good Man is Hard to Find, and unfortunately I did not bring my phone up, so I'm going to keep this as short as possible. One aside, O'Connor writes in her letters that she did receive fan mail after the publication of this story that was basically like, do you really think the good man is hard to find? I'm 31 years old, single, work like a dog. These people have not read the story. Okay, so our main character in question is the grandmother. What do we think are her sins? Like, what are her faults? She lies. She's a little bit manipulative, right? The children have never seen Tennessee. Yeah, I can't believe how she manipulates the children to like annoy their parents, to be like, we want to see the house with the hidden panel. Shrieks a catalog. She's very concerned about appearances, right? And also the old ways. This is where the good man. You can't find a good man around anymore, right? There's that really poignant line where she wore a really nice dress because if somebody saw her dead on the highway, they would know that she was a lady, right? So how does O'Connor break through to the grandmother? Well, she sends a serial killer in The Misfits. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is actually from this mini little essay. It is very small, I apologize, but it's certainly worth reading. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the encounter with the misfit, we're going to jump right there. Actually, I'm going to read these first 3 short paragraphs because it's actually, she introduced, this is a talk that she gave, or a little address that she gave before she read the story out loud. And I think in 1962, I have it in my book, but we'll just say 1962. So this is what she says at the beginning. Last fall, I received a letter from a student who said she would be graciously appreciative if I would tell her just what enlightenment I expected her to get from each of my stories. I suspect she had a paper to write. I wrote her back to forget about the enlightenment and just try to enjoy them. I knew that was the most unsatisfactory answer I could have given because, of course, she didn't want to enjoy them. She just wanted to figure them out. In most English classes, the short story has become a kind of literary specimen to be dissected. Every time a story of mine appears in a freshman anthology, I have a vision of it with its little organs laid open, like a frog in a bottle. She's so funny. I realize that a certain amount of this, what is this significance, has to go on, but I think something has gone wrong in the process when, for so many students, the story simply becomes a problem to be solved, something which you evaporate to get instant enlightenment. No, I'm going to read the next one. A story really isn't any good unless it successfully resists paraphrase, unless it hangs on and expands in the mind. Properly, you analyze to enjoy, but it's equally true that to analyze with any discrimination, you have to have enjoyed already. And I think that the best reason to hear a story read is that it should stimulate that primary enjoyment. So this is very, very wise words from O'Connor, that the story we should enjoy the story first before we try to analyze it and before we try to dissect it. The analysis should help our understanding and bring us to a new level of appreciation, right? I'm going to quote some things from here, but it's going to be pretty scattered, so I just encourage you to read this on your own. So a couple things she says in this essay, that she tries to break through to the grandmother, but in her conversation with the misfit, she's constantly trying to save her own skin, right? She doesn't, again, we discussed that she doesn't offer to pray with the misfit. She just wants him to pray, right? That's kind of very interesting. They have this whole conversation about Jesus and how he's upsetting the balance, right? And she does acknowledge in this essay that, like, the misfit is speaking as the devil here, right? Don't get it wrong, but he himself is not the devil, right? He is a person, but the devil is speaking through him. She was constantly surprised at how people couldn't recognize the devil in her work. So we don't want to be too naive. He is causing, like, doubt here. However, it all comes to this one moment where it says, she says her head cleared for an instant and she saw him, I'm paraphrasing him, she saw him for who he was. Wait, I should just read it, hang on. Let me get my book. She constantly says, "You're a good man, you come from good blood," right? So this obsession with appearance and lineage. Okay, so this is from the end of the story. The misfit says of Jesus, "I wasn't there, so I can't say he didn't raise the dead." The misfit said, I wish I had been there. He said, "He hit the ground with his fist. It ain't right I wasn't there, because if I had been there, I would have known. Listen, lady," he said in a high voice, "if I had been there, I would have known, and I wouldn't be like I am now." His voice seemed about to crack from the grandmother's head, cleared for an instant. She saw the man's face twisted close to her own, as if he were going to cry, and she murmured, "Why, you're one of my babies. You're one of my own children." Okay, I want to pause here, because if you pay attention to the text, he is literally wearing her son's shirt at this point. They drag Bailey's shirt back, and the misfit puts it on, which is really nice detail. Said, "You're one of my own babies, you're one of my children." She reached out and touched him on her shoulder. The misfit sprang back as if a snake had bitten him and shot her 3 times through the chest. Then he put his gun down on the ground and took off his glasses and began to clean them. So O'Connor says of this moment that the grandmother realizes she is responsible for the man before her and joined to him by ties of kinship, which have their roots deep in the mystery she has been merely prattling about so far. This is what O'Connor says of her own work. And at this point, she does the right thing. She makes the right gesture. And she dies with a smile on her face, right? I meant to pull this quote. O'Connor says that she has reported the journeys of a few beasts who are crouching towards Bethlehem. Like it's her job to report their stories, and she thought she did a pretty good job. There's a line from a W.B. Yeats poem, "Beasts Crouching Towards Bethlehem," or slouching towards Bethlehem. And I think it's important, right? Like the goal is to move towards Bethlehem, right? The goal is to move towards redemption, and it is. Oh, I should have written this down. I'm so sorry. A tragic ending is not to die by the side of the road, it's to not be on the journey at all. So she is on the journey, she has this one moment of honesty, and she does the right thing. And she does say, O'Connor says the misfit is not beyond hope either, right? Because previously he says there's no pleasure but meanness, and then at the very end, his last line is that it's no real pleasure in life, right? So he's like, all you can do is be mean, and then he shoots her, and then he's like, well, that wasn't fun at all, right? Shut up, Paoli. So he maybe even changes a little bit. O'Connor says that he at least knew the central choice was either to give up everything to follow Jesus or do whatever you want, because nothing matters. So the grandmother does choose the right thing, but at great cost, and it boils down to a single moment, a single choice. And choice is so important. I know that word, it kind of has ugly connotations for us, particularly with the pro-choice movement. But choice itself, human choice, free will, is so important. And we see it particularly in Mary's fiat, The one choice that Mary makes to say yes to the Lord allows the incarnation, right? A single choice of human will can change the fate of everything. God can act swiftly, but he does need our cooperation, right? He needs us to say yes. And I thought about this, that Cassandra talked last week about negative fiction. We see it in particular these two stories. We don't want to wait in our own life to choose the right path, right? We don't want to wait for God to need violence to like break through to us to get our attention. Am I the type of person who needs the threat of death to be a good man or a good woman? She would have been a good woman, he said, if there had been someone there to shoot her every day of her life. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
Not really tall for that.
Thank you for being here. I feel like we're talking too much at you, but I'll try to go quickly because I too am an English professor with lots of exciting things.
Cassandra, you can pull the mic down and you're still talking.
Okay, not up there. Okay. It's this. I wish that my former undergrad students could be here so that they could see like such a stark disagreement between English teachers. And I'm like, the Miss is the devil. Like, I thought it was more like Jonah. Like, I don't know if I missed something or if that's the beauty of fiction, which cannot be reduced to a paraphrase, because every time you go back to it, something else jumps out. And every time you go back to it, something else is different. And I confessed that I was actually dreading this story, having been acquainted with it for 25 or 6 years at this point, and I'm still creeped out, and I still don't know what's happening in some parts of the story. And when you were talking, Katie, and when we were talking in a group, I was mostly just listening. I didn't making brilliant observations over there. I was astonished by how unreliable both protagonists, if we consider the sort of male characters who come in and switch things up, to be the protagonists. You know, the Mr. Shiflett echoing the line from the diner, which we just read together, that came up in conversation, and Rachel, right? Okay, Rachel pointed out that, yeah, that it echoes what the kid in the diner says, and then you're like, wait, did he love his mom? Was he actually raised with a good mother, or is he just putting on, projecting an act of, you know, the kid in the diner seemed to have actual human kindness, so I'm going to say what he said in a new permutation, and I guess I'm a little astonished that I don't know what's going on, and I don't know if the misfit really killed his dad or not, and I could read it over and over, and I still wouldn't know. I was in the penitentiary. Anyways, sorry, it's like so exciting, and I forgot how fun it is to read fiction. So I said a few times about a sense of place and of the whole person, and I was going to ask, like, who do you think is the worst person in each story? Just like, shout it out. Like,
I
who's
thought the mom was the worst person in
the grandmother or Mrs. Lucy Nell Crater Sr.?
oh yeah, the one that was giving away her daughter to some grandmother who was at the farm. I was really upset by her and bothered by that whole. And then there was a line about she was ravenous for a son-in-law. So it was like you saw her sin so clearly that like she knew what she wanted and she like even her daughter's safety was not enough to stop her.
I agree. So you like, I don't have to do a rhetorical. Wait, surprise! It's actually the seemingly more respectable people. But I think that even though the misfit kills people, and Mr. Shiflett calmly abandons Lucy Nell Crater Jr. in a diner to steal her mother's car, I actually think you're right that we're supposed to be more unnerved by Lucy Nell Crater Sr. And honestly, I would make a case if I were being Wisely and June Star as the
They're
real
so
villains
annoying.
of a good man is hard to find. But then you can say, you know, who knows if they've reached the age of reason? Let's just blame their parents for not teaching them well. But I think what I'm trying to say about the whole person, as Flannery O'Connor conceives of it, is that the misfit and Mr. Shiplet, for all their many flaws, cannot stop talking about God. For all their poverty, their crime, their lack of education, maybe even because of those things, like they haven't lost sight of some important truths that other Americans in O'Connor's day, and certainly I think in ours as well, have forgotten, like original sin, like the fact that we were not made for this world. This is exile. This is our background. We're made for the world to come. Like the fact that life is a gift. We don't make ourselves, and that, you know, acknowledgement and appreciation of the giver is only fitting. Or anger because you didn't get what you wanted. At least they are engaging with God in a way that, you know, we've seen how Crater Senior just rolled that right out. And so here's a quote from O'Connor from her essay on grotesque in Southern fiction, and she actually ties the idea of the whole person. And the whole person is actually the person who knows that there's a part of them missing, which the, you know, one-armed man kind of a little bit on the nose there, but she makes her point with that. And so she said, whenever I'm asked why Southern writers particularly have this penchant for, it's the first quote on your handout, sorry, have this penchant for writing about freaks. I say it is because we are still able to recognize one. To be able to recognize a freak, you have to have some conception of a whole man. And in the South, the general conception of man is still, in the main, theological. That is a large statement, and it is dangerous to make it, for almost anything you say about Southern belief can be denied in the next breath with equal propriety. But approaching the subject from the standpoint of the writer, I think it is safe to say that while the South is hardly Christ-oriented or Christ-centered, it is most certainly Christ-haunted. The Southerner who isn't convinced of it is very much afraid that he may have been formed in the image and likeness of God. Ghosts can be very fierce and instructive. They cast strange shadows, particularly in our literature. In any case, it is when the freak can be sensed as a figure for our essential displacement that he attains some truth in literature. And then if we go to the second quote, which is where Mr. Shiplet sort of reveals his, I would say, sort of Jonah, reluctant prophet. He's running away. He doesn't want to go to them. He doesn't want to accept that God has given him whatever mission or calling, vocation. Lady, he said, jerking his short arm up as if he could point with it to her house and yard and pump. There ain't a broken thing on this plantation that I couldn't fix for you, one-armed jackleg or not. I'm a man, he said with a sullen dignity. Even if I ain't a whole one. I got it, he said, tapping his knuckles on the floor to emphasize the immensity of what he was going to say. A moral intelligence. And his face pierced out of the darkness into a shaft of doorlight, and he stared at her as if he were astonished himself at this impossible truth. The old woman, whom you were correct to identify as the villain, the old woman was not impressed with the phrase. I told you you could hang around and work for food, she said, if you don't mind sleeping in that car yonder. Why, listen, lady, he said with a grin of delight. The monks of old slept in their coffins. They wasn't as advanced as we are, the old woman said. So she shuts the door on mystery. She shuts the door on theology. She doesn't have money. You get the sense that Bailey and his wife have a fair amount of money. The kids are certainly up on all of his TV shows and Queen for a Day, whatever would have been contemporary at the time. But maybe that makes more sense now, and I think one criticism you could fairly give O'Connor is like, could we have reverse engineered her views on the whole man from Mr. Shiplet without reading the quote about, you know, the thing about the South and freaks is we can still recognize them. And I think you can make a case that no, it doesn't always come through the message that's in there, that's implicit. When I had students read two different stories, but one was A Good Man's Certified and one was The River, which has sort of violence or death, but it's sad as opposed to comedic. And the students were split 50-50, like they could handle the one or not the other. But a good, also again, about 50% of them didn't know what baptism was. This was at West Point, the United States military, by the way. So these were kids who had some sense of service, who had some sense of, you know, they worked hard, they ended up at, you gotta get your senator or congressperson to like nominate you to get in there. So they were good kids, but about half of them had no idea what baptism is, which floored me. So I'm like, I don't know if they could reverse engineer it. So you could criticize the parents, but I couldn't find it in the story. That's why you have guides to tell you that this is either Jonah or the devil. You choose. You get to read and sort of see what jumps out at you. But I could say, you could sort of say, I don't know what see the religion, okay, like the theological guidance of the word. Yeah, anyway, so the missing limb, it shows us our woundedness, or it's a symbol, I think, for our woundedness and our essential displacement. And I think there's an interesting scene where, well, I don't know, I feel like we're running out of time and I should get into chat, but where the mother says, let me tell you something, there ain't any place in the world for a poor, disabled, friendless, drifting man. And it really sticks with him. The ugly word settled in Mr. Shiplett's head like a group of buzzards in the top of a tree. And I don't know if he was going to do what he did before that moment, or if she sort of set him up and made him feel weaker than he wanted to. But that whole scene, there's another snake in there. She laid the bait carefully. You can have it painted the car by Saturday. I'll pay for the paint. In the darkness, Mr. Shiplett's smile stretched like a weary snake waking up by the fire. So we've got that snake, the misfit. We've got that snake, which I think we're supposed to think of Eden in this way. And yeah, that would be my case, is that the person who's angry, reluctant, rebellious, and maybe just at best afraid that there is a God is still a step ahead of the person who is completely content with consumerism, materialism, you name it, you name an acceptable middle class or working class way to pass the time without thinking about that there's, you can't want to go to the great position unless you realize you're wounded. And they do know that. But then I'm like, I don't know if it was the devil. Artists are not always the best readers of their own work. As for her sense of place, we covered it a little bit in that last quote. I'm going to read one more passage, which is from a talk she gave to a group of aspiring short story writers. My students always told me that I was a harsh grader, and I really want to know what the faces look like of the aspiring short story writers as they heard her say these words. With the exception of one story, there was practically no use made of the local age. She also told them there's no images, none. I remember the cliches, but there wasn't a single memorable image. This follows after that. Now this is a Southern Writers Conference. All the addresses on these stories were from Georgia or Tennessee, yet there was no distinctive sense of Southern life in them. A few place names were dropped, Savannah or Atlanta or Jacksonville, but these could just as easily have been changed to Pittsburgh or Passaic without calling for any other alteration in the story. The characters spoke as if they had never heard any kind of language, except what came out of the television set. This indicates that something is way out of focus. And this is my own personal interest in O'Connor, and interested in her views on technology, and she thinks that it's kind of rubbing the fingerprints off. It's rubbing the specificity off. Like something is happening on screens that is not as embodied, we could say sacramental, as sort of particular, and that's where we have to live, or that's where we should want to live. And I guess I'm just offering that passage to you about the language, because I think there are words that will stand out from the stories and images and turns of phrase that you'll laugh at later. But I would say it's an invitation to gratitude. Maybe Madison is a little bit less this way than Milwaukee, which has colleges, but it doesn't have that college kind of feel. But there are manners of speaking and behaving, and we might also be a little Christ haunted. It's very Catholic and Lutheran around here. But how much does that actually seep in? I don't know. But I was recently at Mass, the priest at my parish, one of them, was giving a homily, and he paraphrased Jesus. I don't remember what gospel reading it was, but Jesus, as paraphrased by Father Parish, began you guys, you have to do that too, that thing in the parable. And it made me so happy as a person who has heard the phrase "you guys" as a kind of gender-neutral Midwestern second person plural, which we don't have in English. And it like sometimes a recent-ish convert to the Catholic Church, and sometimes I see it, the altar Christus, where the priest is both very much himself and also very much Christ. And Jesus saying, "You guys," I was like, that's beautiful. Like I am home in a weird way with that phrase. And so I'm just offering that to you. I'm setting Ryan up really poorly to talk to us about movies, I guess, but to say talk to people around. There are these beautiful things that are particular to where we are, and maybe y'all can go on a pilgrimage to Milledgeville and see the things that informed O'Connor's vision. But I would also say put those real concrete particulars, in your own lives too. I don't know if you're going to go with short stories later, but just there's something about that I think is also part of the creative world that God gives to us as a gift. That maybe gets lost in translation on TV sometimes. My question, if I leave you with one to chat for a while, would be do you think O'Connor's reluctant prophets, which I've argued for them being, do they succeed either artistically or are they going bold? Do you feel like something changed in their life, or do they succeed in provoking the reader to think about that more or different?
I also, just to add on, I don't want you to walk away thinking that O'Connor thought the misfit was the devil. This is from the essay that I handed out. I just have it in my book. She says, "I don't want to equate the misfit with the devil. I prefer to think that, however unlikely this may seem, the old lady's gesture, like the mustard seed, will grow to be a great crow-filled tree in the misfit's heart, and will be enough of a pain to him there to turn him into the prophet he was meant to become. But that's another story."
Yeah, I was saying, that quote, when you guys read that, I don't remember when you did it, but when he said to her, "If I had been there, I would have seen it," and I know when I thought of the story, the gospel, the parable of the rich man who dies, and he's like, "Just can you send Moses or Lazarus or send it to me?" And then he'll know that it's real. And they're like, if all of the prophets have not been enough for them, maybe this and that's kind of saying, "I know it's real, but I'm not willing to believe it because I had to be there to see it myself." And that's just that's still what I would say today. We want empirical proof of it, and so that when she says that to him, here were my babies, and recognizes his humanity, it's it hits him it bites him like a snake. It's so violent to him. That's a really amazing scene right there. What happens to him next?
Sorry, could you
Do we
repeat the question?
want to do small groups? Or do
We get some. I think. Can you repeat the question again?
Oh, I think you guys should just talk about whatever jumped out at you as great, and whether any of that informed something about your takeaway. Because I don't want to constrain it too much, but my question was does it work? These are all these thoughts. Do they work for this weird? Or are you just because I dreaded rereading these stories. I was I know O'Connor's just the same as every time. It's you get hit with the book, you get hit with the gum. And then I was and then I said, no, it's weird, and I still don't know. Why can't anybody remember? And so that was my way of whenever I think that she's old and repeating something, or I'm I know this, I'm I don't. The ground is just underneath. So that's why I'm I don't know, it shifted differently for you because you're in a different, you read it with different eyes, and you read it with a different, background. So it's just, I don't know what you see, I can't do it. Yeah.
I shared with my group that I wanted to share. I just moved to
All right, hopefully you guys are having a great conversation like we were having. I want to interrupt it and switch gears here. We got about 20 minutes left, and next week we're going to see a movie, and I'm the movie guy, so I come up to talk about that a little bit. But just every conversation that I've had over the last several weeks with many different people have been just so fruitful. And I've done a lot of book studies and book groups, and this is probably my favorite so far. So, I hope you all are experiencing this as well in the same way, and how, God can use stories like The Hobbit and Flannery O'Connor's stories in order that we can, grow closer to Him, which sounds really, really weird. Like if you had that as a t-shirt, it'd be really weird. Cool. So, again, I'm Ryan, the film guy. I run a marketing agency. I've also created a documentary feature-length film called Power in My Hands about the impact that the Rosary has had, praying the Rosary, on people's lives. And it's really, really great. We produced that maybe about 8 years ago. It's been a long time. I'm starting to get old. Recently is now like decades ago. And we're working on more movies. And the reason I got into all this, and I feel like I'm realizing this now as a grown man who, when I go to the doctor, they say, now at your age, I'm getting that now, and I'm just finally kind of figuring out maybe part of my why of what I do. But in visual audio storytelling, in film, we're able to connect in a way that is unique. And there's great merits to film, and the church talks about that, and we got a lot of great people who talk about it as well. So we're going to look at the merits of film real quick, and then talk a little bit about the film, and then Matthew's going to take us away. But real quick, anybody seen a movie before? Seen a movie? Okay, half of you are honest, the other half are not. How about rented a movie at a Blockbuster? Okay, all right. That was one of my favorite experiences. There was something to that experience. What about streaming movies? Anybody stream movies these days? Okay. Anybody still going to the movie theater? Yeah, look at you guys. You guys love story. And there's something to experiencing story in that grand way that's really, really unique. And we all have favorite movies. I'm sure, I don't know, anybody think of one? Shout one out. Favorite movie? Oh, that I couldn't understand. Somebody give me one? Philadelphia Story. Why do you love that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah? You love an actress or a person or the way that they portray? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. A great love story. And those films just had classic charm. We love to go back and watch many of those movies. What about anybody else? Casablanca? Yeah, that's a good one too. Why do you like that?
Romance.
Yeah.
Set in a time in history that was really stressful and terrible.
Yeah, and both of these films as well, you'd probably be hard pressed to find somebody that that is, thinks that is a terrible, absolute, worthless movie, right? It might not be somebody's cup of tea, but I think everyone can recognize the merits of those films. And I think there's something to all of the films we love. I love, Anchorman. It's a great desert island movie. If you're stuck somewhere, just dumb comedy, keep you going, right? Donnie Darko is a weird psychological thriller that doesn't make sense, that you guys shouldn't watch. It's not good. I don't know, maybe it's good. I haven't watched it in many years though, but it had an impact on me. Or we have films that actually kind of reminded me as we were kind of talking, and we were talking about these characters today, that reminded me of kind of the yuck of humanity that points towards grace, that points towards God. And some of these movies were like American History X, which my wife abhors, Fight Club,
American Beauty, these were kind of like high school, college movies too, that were like just not your blockbusters or your Disney movies or, you know, those movies that everyone liked. These were kind of a little off the beaten path. But to go back to that idea of the merits of film, we talked a little bit about film as co-creative work and art as co-creative work, right? So you're reading a book and you're imagining something, and you're going to imagine something in a different way than I'm going to imagine something. You're going to experience it in a different way than I'm going to experience it. And there's co-creation in there, and we get to co-create, you know, with God in this. John Paul II, St. John Paul, Pope St. John Paul, whatever. Pope St. John Paul II, letter of artist, reminds us, you know, about the importance of art, but then film in particular has a power to shape perception and imagination and can be a privileged vehicle of this revelation. And I don't want to get into books are better, movies are better, because they're different tools. You know, they're different vehicles to experience something. We're going to watch Wildcat next week at SMG, and that's an hour and 48 minutes. And you're going to be taken on a journey like you probably haven't been on in a while. It's a biopic, but it also wraps in storytelling from her stories, from these, some of the stories that we've read, like Revelation and Good Man is Hard to Find, and then a bunch of other ones, where even the actress who portrays Flannery O'Connor is then portraying characters in the story, which there's interconnectedness. And I don't want you to get caught up in analysis, like Cassandra, I think, was saying, or maybe it's Katie, I don't know. One of you guys, Katie, was saying, in the article as well. Maybe if you watch it 2 or 3 more times, because you want to understand it better, you can get into analysis. But I want you to look at it with a sacramental worldview, right? So the merit of film is that it can be extremely impactful. It's like a parable, right? These stories are parables, but parables typically are pretty short. And movies now are kind of getting longer, or have gotten longer, but this one's a great length. So we can experience, you know, a full range of emotions through this story in a short amount of time. So it's very much like a parable as well. And again, with that sacramental worldview, I hope that through the book study, you've come to appreciate in a similar way that I have, a style of writing, maybe an author that I didn't appreciate. You know, or think very much of Flannery O'Connor. I knew kind of what she was about, and my friends liked her, so I was kind of more open to what she had, but just the genre, not my genre, you know. And some hard stories and some hard ideas in there, but through kind of our sacramental worldview, where we're approaching these, where we're looking for moments of grace, you know, different than The Hobbit, where he's kind of presented on an adventure and he gets 2 choices and he chooses something good. Our characters are hit in the face with a book, you know, looking down the barrel of a gun. A little bit more maybe realistic, hopefully not too realistic, than The Hobbit may be to us, but these are more real characters, and I kept finding myself commiserating, empathizing with them. And we were talking right there, and as we were listening, we were talking about one of the characters last week, where she would rank people, and at least I'm not that, at least I'm that, and I was like, man, that's terrible. It's not that bad. Wait, I kind of am like, well, at least I don't do that. And, you know, at least I'm not like them. And I'm like, oh man, that's not good. So these stories are a way to help us, you know, to hit us in the face sometimes, so that we get those opportunities of grace to choose God's goodwill in our lives. So I want us to have that sacramental worldview that we've been talking about. The outward sign of the inward grace, right? So you may get to the end of the movie, you may be like, that was weird. But what I don't want you to say, I don't want you to say that was bad, or that was terrible. I want you to think about it, again, the inward sign, or the outward sign of the inward grace. What do we see in there that teaches us something? And again, I want you to enjoy it. So don't overanalyze, be present with the movie and approach it. And it's going to be weird, and we're going to go through this together. And that's, you know, kind of part of our journey. That's all right. That's this there and back again that we're going on through this book club. And so, yeah, power of truth to reveal beauty, true, good, and beautiful. That's kind of my mission with filmmaking, is to, in action in the secular world. I have a secular company, and we want to bring what is true, good, and beautiful to them. Even to the point where one of our secular clients is great. He's like, "There's something different about you guys." And we're like, "Yes, Jesus." Like, good content aside, like we were a reflection of hopefully our love of God. And then we can do that in our visual storytelling, and we just I don't know, kind of announced that we're pregnant with our 8th child. We're very proud about, and it's interesting because my wife, she's very outgoing, but she doesn't like, poignant attention. So like whenever we're pregnant, she's like, I don't want to tell anyone. Like you handle it, and then once you've done that, then it's all good and whatever. So in this case too, we were kind of thinking, and we joked about having like a family podcast, like 6 to Life or 7 to Life, kind of like a jail allegory, but the loveliness of being parents. So then we thought about it. We were talking about it a while ago. Monica may or may not remember this, but just a different experience of finding out we were pregnant with each kid. And so I took each kid, and I was like, "You're going to help me represent the emotion that we felt when we found out we were pregnant with you." So we started with the first child, big smile, and then went to the second child, and I had them with me on camera, emoting with me, and I just told them, "Give me a big smile, be straight faced and give me a smile." Second kid, kind of like a smirk, looking at each other. Third kid, Sebastian, a little more wide-eyed, looked at each other. Let's see, fourth kid, Damien, is a little more like, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Fifth kid, Mary, was like, "Oh no." And she did that face with me, and we laughed, and it was cute. And then 6, and then 7, and then 8, Monica appears, and we hit knuckles. We pounded it. That's a long way of saying in 45 seconds we were able to communicate something lovely and emotional. And for me, it's blown up so far. Just random people. 96% of the viewers are random people who watch it and like it, to the tune of like 10,000 people, which is really kind of cool. I like to think they're praising life, praising God in that. And we did that in a 45-second video, right? So bringing what is true, good, and beautiful into the world. So again, with Wildcat, it is a biopic, but not in the same way that you might think. And I was trying to find comparable movies. I can't find comparable movies. There's some like Frida Kahlo or Jackson Pollock biopics, which kind of do some similar type storytelling, and they're weird just because those artists were weird. But nothing that kind of weaves it in the same way. So we're in for kind of a great experience together. It's about O'Connor's life in the 1950s when she's trying to publish her debut novel, Wise Blood, while grappling with the diagnosis of lupus. And they're going to weave all her other stories as we hear more about and see more about her. And there's even some great behind the scenes where it's directed by Ethan Hawke, and he co-wrote it, and his daughter Maya Hawke plays Flannery O'Connor, which is really interesting. And are we sharing the podcast, or do you have that YouTube video, or we have some materials that you have shared? Okay, there are links to this. So there's no homework, but give those a listen. They can provide some additional context as well, again, to help frame us in that sacramental worldview. So we're going to watch this movie. It blends the biography and fiction together in a subjective, dreamlike narrative. Again, couldn't find any comparables. And even the National Catholic Reporter and different groups were like, "This is weird and dark and janky." But that doesn't mean it has to be not good, right? I'll see a bad movie. Typically, someone else says it's bad, and I find something that is good. I just like to have that perspective. I feel that that's a little more of a godly kind of sacramental worldview. And so when somebody asks, "How was that movie?" I'll say, "Oh, there was this one part that was really, really emotional, and I really liked that." What did we watch? How to Train Your Dragon. The live action one. I don't know about the rest of the movie, but there's just some touching moments between the father and the son, and I was like choking up. And I was like, that right there, the father-son relationship. the movie's really, really good anyway, but, you know, finding it, because I have an openness to that sacramental worldview. I'm looking for something good. I'm not looking for problems. If you're looking for problems, you're going to find problems. You know, it's not what comes in that defiles, right? It's what comes out. So let's approach it with a very positive perspective. And it's okay if you're not going to recommend it. Like, I don't recommend anybody watch Tommy Darko. I don't recommend most of you watch Anchorman. Very inappropriate humor. Some of you definitely should. But we're going to watch that. It's going to be fun. What else? Yeah, that's about it. I think that's kind of the overview. Next week we're going to watch, and I think Matthew's going to come up and give us a little bit more context. Something about the phone. Time. Oh yeah, no, I got that. Yeah. All right, that's what we got. So that's how we're going to approach it next week. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Thanks so much. Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Susan. Is that everybody? Thank you, God, for everything. Yes. So, no, it's been a real pleasure to have this book club. I will say a few words. Just I was reflecting on the stories, and I'll just we'll say some more about the film, then about how we'll close tonight. But I was struck. I read John 7 earlier today. If you missed that, John 7 and a portion of John 8. There's a section in John 7 where Jesus is confronted, of course, by folks who do not understand him. And there's debate about the nature of Jesus. Some say he's a good man. And others say he has a demon. And so this interesting juxtaposition of like the good man, that some people recognize Jesus, the very Messiah, the very Son of God, to be the good man, in fact, the best man, in fact, like the supreme man, like the second Adam, the full and true human. And yet some people who just can't see it, and they just mistake him for the demonic, an emissary of the evil one, right? And then a good man is hard to find. It's this interesting sort of discussion of the misfit being a kind of Satan-like figure, right? One could argue, like C.S. Lewis, I know Monica, you appreciate this, the unman, a character of Weston in the story of Paralandra, right? Where we can so dehumanize ourselves such that the question about who we're becoming, what we're becoming, is a really important one. There's a scene in The Good Man's Hard to Find, and the grandmother, she says this, she says, yes, it's a beautiful day, said the grandmother. Listen, she said, you shouldn't call yourself the misfit, because I know you're a good man at heart. I can just look at you and tell. And then he does this, he says, I appreciate that, lady. The misfit said and drew a little circle in the ground with the butt of his gun. Right? Now, if that ain't John 8 illusion, I don't know what is, right? So we have these interesting resonances, right? You have someone with a Catholic imagination like Flannery O'Connor, who's like literally trafficking in all of these different layers of meaning across literature, across the sacred scriptures, right? And this question of, she says, the grandmother says, you're a good man at heart, right? At heart. And there's a scene in the life you saved me to be your own, right? Where, I'm going to find it here, realize I lost my spot. Yeah, here it is. There's this one scene where Mr. Shiflett says this. He says, I want to tell you something. There's one of these doctors in Atlanta that's taken a knife and cut the human heart. The human heart, he repeated, leaning forward out of a man's chest and held it in his hand. And he held his hand out, palm up, as if it were slightly weighted with the human heart. And studied it like it was a day-old chicken. And lady, he said, allowing a long, significant pause in which his head slid forward and his clay-colored eyes brightened, he don't know no more about it than you or me. Right? Now, if there ain't something going on there, right? These layers of meaning, right? We don't, what's the prophet Jeremiah say? The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can know it? Right? So there's all these layers, and I just want to highlight just the way in which her imagination is scripture saturated. Cassandra brought this Mystery and Manners quote. It's actually the Mystery and Manners, I think, includes the quote she writes, which I just read just because I was interested in learning more about her own theory but it's the Catholic novelist and the Protestant South. So she delivers a series of these talks to different places. This particular one is from Georgetown University in 1963. And it's right around the time that the Second Vatican Council opens. But she says in this speech to these folks at Georgetown, she says that a secular society, this is 1963, a secular society understands the religious mind less and less. It becomes more and more difficult in America to make belief believable, which is what the novelist has to do. It takes less and less belief acted upon to make one appear a fanatic. Now that ain't true, right? I mean, come on. I remember sitting at a bar with my friend some years back when I first came to Madison, and he knew I was a Christian, and I said, I believe in the resurrection of Jesus, and I said, isn't that crazy? Right? And he was like, that is crazy. I was like, it really is. It's crazy if you think about it, right? And we have here before us, right, the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament. Every Mass is a miracle, right? If you believe in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, you can believe anything about the claims of Christianity, right? And so here what O'Connor is recognizing is that when belief, right, she says it's more and more difficult in America. It's becoming less and less Christian. It's becoming more and more secular to make belief believable. So even the smallest things appear as fanatic. But then later on in this essay, she says, or this speech, she says, when in talking about the American South and why it's important for her to write from a place in particular, she says, some of the writer's instruments have unfortunately to be shared with the reader. But the fact that Catholics, and here she's going to indict us, so gird up thy loins, right? But the fact that Catholics are not accustomed to seeing religion biblically, and as opposed to a biblical lens, is a deficiency on the part of Catholics. And if the Catholic writer tries to accommodate himself to such deficiency, our literature will always be going downhill, and ourselves behind it. This is, after all, a correctable deficiency, not invincible ignorance. Now, there's a lot going on in that statement. Nothing, I think, will ensure the future of Catholic literature in this country so much as the biblical revival. Unfortunately, that revival is still the pursuit of the educated, and it is the good which the poor and the ignorant hold in common that is most valuable to the fiction writer. When the poor hold sacred history in common, they have concrete ties to the universal and the holy, which allow the meaning of their every action to be heightened and seen under the aspect of eternity. To be great storytellers, we need something to measure ourselves against. And this is what we conspicuously lack in this age. And then she goes on to talk about it takes a story to make a story, and this is to Ryan's point, it takes a story of mythic dimensions, one which belongs to everybody, one in which everybody is able to recognize the hand of God and imagine its descent upon himself. In the Protestant South, the scriptures fill this hole. Right? So for her, she sees that has to be the medium by which to communicate the truth and the fullness of truth. And so she says the Catholic novelist in the South is forced to follow the Spirit into strange places and to recognize it in many forms, not totally congenial to him. She says, and so she talks a bit about all the distorted visions of Christ, right? That she, from her point of view, she sees at work in Southern Christianity. And she gives one example, and I'll close with this. A few years ago, a preacher in Tennessee attracted considerable attention when he sacrificed a live lamb chained to a cross at his Lenten revival service. Apparently this happened. It is possible that this was simple showmanship, but I doubt it. I presume that this was as close to the Mass as he could come. There are ways in which people will search after truth, and they will do things, and in spite of themselves, they have no idea what it is they're doing, but something of mythic proportions is impelling them to do it, right? And they're acting in ways that they don't even understand, that's groping after the truth, right? And so she says, I believe it will be the Catholic fiction that will do this kind of rehabilitative work, There is only one Holy Spirit, and he is no respecter of persons. These people in the invisible church make discoveries that have meaning for us who are better protected from the vicissitudes of our own natures. Now she's talking about people outside of the Catholic tradition. But she says we don't have some of the same problems that they do, but we have our own problems, right? And she says, but we're often too dead to the world to make any discoveries at all. So she says for her, the grotesque, these stories that she tells are an attempt to awaken us from our slumbers, and hopefully, as she says here, part of this recovery will entail a biblical revival, and she says a return to identity, an identity that is rooted in the truth in an objective sense, which is why perhaps the misfit in the story is actually kind of a prophet, because he recognizes that when truth goes away, when there's meaning, like when there is no God, and there is no Jesus, and there is no resurrection, and there is no objective moral standard, then nothing matters, right? And so you can shoot people in an unfeeling manner, right? And be a sociopath. So, but again, it's been a crazy ride we've been on. We've been from Middle Earth to Mobile, Alabama. And so there we have it. So next week we are filmed. We will gather at same time, 6:30. And it should be fun. We have a big screen, as you know, at St. Ready, a good sound system. And so just come as you are, and if you want to see this film, it's always interesting to see film and then to talk about it in person. We'll talk a bit about it afterwards too. In the meantime, we'll be gathering. If you're interested, we'll go to the Paoli pub just across the way yonder. And if you want to have a beer and some nachos or something, you're welcome to join us. Have a great evening.